Here's the brutal truth. Who shot Drew isn't a mystery, it's a stalling tactic. Scout is not the only grandchild in the room, yet Alexis keeps acting as if she's curating a one-child legacy. Danny is also family, which is a fairly basic concept in a town built on DNA tests and conveniently timed paternity reveals. Favoritism is not a personality trait. It is a malfunction. Meanwhile, the pairing of Cody and Molly briefly suggested the show remembered how chemistry works. It was a rare moment of narrative competence, two characters placed together, without it feeling like a hostage negotiation. Naturally, that sort of progress now hangs in limbo, presumably until someone decides whether the relationship is meant to last or merely fill airtime between crises. Then there's the matter of the cell phone and Willow taking Daisy. Plot threads introduced with the confidence of something important, and then promptly abandoned like yesterday's dialogue. At some point, those details either need to matter or stop being dangled like evidence in a case no one is investigating. The most tragic unraveling, however, belongs to Marco. Natalia spent her life doing what parents in Port Charles apparently must do as a second job, shielding a child from the gravitational pull of organized crime. She understood exactly what Sidwell represented and fought to keep Marco from becoming just another casualty of inherited darkness. For a while, it seemed her sacrifice meant something, like Marco might actually choose a life not defined by blood ties and criminal loyalty. And now, watching him sink deep into his father's world is not a complex character arc. It is a slow-motion demolition of everything Natalia tried to build. The disappointment isn't merely emotional, it's practical. When someone embeds themselves in that kind of danger, the consequences don't stay neatly confined to the guilty. Innocent people get dragged into the fallout. Lucas Jones and Ace Cassadine should not become collateral damage in Marco's midlife audition for the family business. As for the who shot Drew situation, enough. The audience does not need a sprawling mystery when the character being shot already feels like a storyline in human form. This plot has overstayed its welcome, and the pacing suggests the writers are stretching it not because it's compelling, but because it is convenient. Resolve it and move on. The sunny romantic carousel continues to do what it does best: create regret in real time. The question of whether Sunny regrets choosing Nina over Carly is less a debate and more an inevitability, given the show's long-standing devotion to making Sunny's love life a revolving door of lessons he never learns. Michael, on the other hand, remains oddly polarizing despite being one of the few characters willing to operate with genuine ruthlessness. That quality is frequently treated like a flaw by viewers who want their drama characters to behave like guidance counselors. The truth is simpler: ruthless Michael is at least honest about the game being played, which makes the insistence that Michael isn't connected to Drew's shooting feel strangely naive. He has motive, means, and opportunity, especially against someone like Drew, who has managed to collect enemies through sheer persistence. The argument that if Michael wanted Drew dead, he would be dead, is not the airtight defense it pretends to be. The goal does not have to be murder. It can be fear. It can be pressure. It can be a warning disguised as a near miss. And if Michael was positioned across from Drew's house to ensure the plan went smoothly, that is not a coincidence. It is supervision. One point, however, remains clear. Willow is not the shooter. The obsession with making her a suspect is less grounded speculation and more an ongoing refusal to accept the obvious. A smaller detail also slipped through. Boats visible behind Curtis and Jordan's scene at Bobby's, implying the place is near the docks. It's a minor continuity reveal, but in a show currently misplacing entire histories, it counts as a miracle. Speaking of suspects, the possibility that Christina shot Drew is at least logically coherent. She has reasons, real ones, not the manufactured kind that evaporate after sweeps week. In a town where emotional reactions routinely escalate into felonies, her involvement would be the least shocking development. On the domestic front, Brooke Lynn and Chase are behaving exactly as expected, because Chase has never been subtle about who he is. When he believes in someone, he becomes a one-man loyalty cult. His defense of Willow is not deception. It is conviction delivered with direct eye contact and absolute certainty. Brooklyn married him with full awareness of that trait. So standing by him now is not blind devotion, it is consistency. Their Christmas scenes worked because they were grounded in something rare. Two people acting like they actually know each other. If Sunny's past pairing with Kate is being dragged again, the distaste is understandable. Not every relationship needs to be honored as growth. Some were simply misfires that should remain in the vault. And then there's the show's increasingly athletic approach to romance. Everyone with everyone, at speeds that make family trees look like tangled wire. It is genuinely surprising that incest panic has not become a larger topic, given how close it already came with Cody and Sasha. For a town filled with doctors and medically literate adults, birth control is treated like a mythological artifact. The result is not passion. It is carelessness dressed as drama. Finally, the writing appears to be actively misplacing its own canon. Michael's claim that Drew manipulated Wiley twice raises a basic question. When was the second time? One memorable incident at the hospital exists, but the alleged repeat offense does not. And Sidwell's reference to Nicholas's presumed death as a reason Ace could have inherited Windermere is not just wrong. It is wrong in multiple directions. If inheritance were the point, Spencer would have been the heir, since Ace wasn't even born yet. Windermere later went to Ava through her divorce settlement, and Nicholas sold it to Sidwell via Lucy. Nicholas's fake death is irrelevant to that chain of events. The confusion is not subtle. It reads like a writer's room trying to bluff its way through a history lesson. Port Charles can handle absurdity. It thrives on it. But when character motivation gets sloppy, mysteries get dragged out, and decades of continuity are rewritten mid-sentence, the result is not bold storytelling. It is noise. Loud, repetitive noise, pretending to be plot. Everyone's asking, who shot Drew? The real question is why the show is treating basic logic like an optional feature. Alexis managed to purse her lips and deliver the tidy little moral. Drew is a grown-up, and therefore fully capable of taking care of himself. A touching sentiment, right up until the memory surfaces of Alexis siphoning money from Ace's Cassadine Trust to bankroll blackmail payments, meant to shield Christina, who is also, by definition, a grown-up, and allegedly capable of handling her own disasters. The principle seems less like a belief system and more like seasonal decor, brought out when convenient, packed away when not. Meanwhile, Brooklyn's apparent conviction that Chase's loyalty should orbit her is an impressive feat of confidence, considering she divorced him. Loyalty is not a warranty that survives cancellation. It tends to follow the person still acting like a partner, namely Willow. Expecting otherwise is not romantic. It is simply entitlement dressed as longing. Then there is Drew himself, whose character trajectory has become a case study in narrative amnesia. There was a time when he resembled a man urgently trying to save his brother. Now he reads like the writer swapped out the soul and left the nameplate, trusting no one would notice. The shift is so abrupt, it does not feel like development. It feels like replacement. And looming over everything is the Who Shot Drew storyline, a mystery so late to its own urgency, it could file paperwork as a historical reenactment. The audience has been promised clarity. Supposedly, the truth will surface once Kai and Trina begin assembling clues. Finally. Because nothing says high-stakes whodunit-like waiting until the story has aged into a grievance. The suspect list, naturally, has become a rotating display of whoever happens to be available for scandal. Sam remains a popular candidate, particularly if the plot requires a dramatic return, a conveniently revealing ringtone, and the ever-reliable explanation of brainwashing, which is the soap equivalent of wiping fingerprints with a shrug. The only unresolved inconvenience is why Michael, if he witnessed anything, would maintain silence, which is either a deliberate clue or yet another instance of characters behaving irrationally to protect a plot. Christina also hovers near the center of suspicion, especially if a temporary absence from the canvas needs a neat narrative exit, preferably one involving a psychiatric facility. In this version of events, the show can claim consequence while still keeping the door open for redemption later, because nothing says accountability like a storyline that doubles as scheduling logistics. Heather, too, gets tossed into the mix because certain names function as default culprits when the writing needs menace without effort. Then there is the Monica theory, which deserves recognition not because it is convincing, but because it is illustrative of how desperate the mystery has made everyone. The idea goes like this. Someone drives Monica to confront Drew. She asks for privacy. She goes inside. She shoots him. The reasoning hinges on her being a surgeon who would know where the heart is from the back, and therefore would not miss, would not hesitate, and would definitely finish the job. Which is precisely why the theory collapses. Either Monica is a lethal precision instrument, or she is not the shooter. If the story leans on her medical background as proof of plausibility while ignoring the rest of her established character, it will not be shocking. It will be laughable. All of this would be easier to tolerate if the investigation itself did not feel like selective enforcement. Other crimes and murders have been conveniently forgotten by the Port Charles Police Department, yet this particular case has been stretched into an endless centerpiece. The imbalance is not suspense, it is inconsistency. Dragging a storyline out does not deepen interest, it measures it, and the result is rarely flattering. The whole arc has the unmistakable air of writers throwing something at the wall to see what sticks, then acting surprised when the wall is covered in dents, but no one is impressed. The surrounding legal and custody drama is hardly more coherent. There is talk of Willow being let off the hook, apparently because Alexis followed instructions, an arrangement never anchored by any clearly shown written agreement. And regardless of how the case resolves, the expectation is that Drew will continue weaponizing access to Scout, possibly escalating to legal theatrics about restraining orders, and who was allowed to see her. It is a grimly predictable pattern, the law as a prop, custody as leverage, and paperwork as a magic wand that transforms pettiness into righteousness. Drew's conduct in this arena has inspired the inevitable observation that intelligence should be a job requirement for attorneys, particularly for anyone dedicating time and strategy to a case whose outcome will not change the underlying reality. If Drew has decided Scout will be isolated from her family, legal rulings will function as decoration, not deterrent. The effort becomes performance, exhausting, expensive, and ultimately irrelevant. Elsewhere, the show continues to audition villains with varying degrees of nuance. The contrast between Sidwell and Sunny is drawn in blunt terms. Sidwell harms whoever is in the way. Sunny, for all his sins, supposedly does not go after children. It is a low bar presented as a moral code, which is very on-brand for a town that routinely crowns criminals as principled men because they have one boundary left. There is also a strong desire to clear out dead weight and restore sharper personalities. Ezra is singled out as expendable, while Scotty Baldwin is held up as the antidote. An understandable craving for a character who can inject bite and momentum without needing an elaborate conspiracy to justify basic entertainment. And because Port Charles never met a paternity twist it could resist, there is speculation that Portia might discover Isaiah is the father, only for the story to reverse itself when it's revealed Isaiah altered test results, making Curtis the biological father after all. The suggestion does not stop at deception, it pushes Isaiah into full villain mode, a descent into obsession, stalking, and eventual prison. The appetite here is not subtlety, it is consequence. If the show insists on recycling familiar tropes, the least it can do is commit to the fallout. Finally, Michael's personal arc continues to draw criticism for a different reason, not confusion, but chill. There is affection for him as a character, but the treatment of Willow is described as cold-blooded, emotionally remote, strategically harsh, and delivered with the kind of clinical distance that makes every conflict feel less like heartbreak and more like punishment. In short, the current landscape is a blend of hypocrisy, character whiplash, and storylines stretched beyond their natural shelf life. The pieces are all there for compelling drama, moral contradictions, fractured loyalties, messy motives, and simmering secrets. The frustration is that the show keeps arranging those pieces like a puzzle it refuses to finish, then acting as though the audience should applaud the suspense rather than notice the stall. The Who Shot Drew mystery is being treated like a national emergency, when it is really just a moderately paced whodunit that already feels exhausting. The Who Shot Drew question is being treated like a national emergency, when it is really just a moderately paced mystery that already feels exhausting. Yes, most long-form General Hospital whodunits traditionally stretch 6 to 8 months, and this one is only around 4. So, technically, the writing is not dragging. The issue is simpler. The trial, the endless circling, and Drew's center stage suffering have worn out their welcome, and the most satisfying twist at this point would be a brisk conclusion, followed by Drew being escorted directly to jail on extortion charges. Meanwhile, the show is juggling practical realities and asking the audience to pretend it is all organic storytelling. The prolonged absences tied to the actor who plays Kevin Collins are being rationalized by an outside gig, reportedly playing a mobster on Beyond the Gates, and the plot conveniently accommodates this with a take Ace out of town detour. That sort of narrative elasticity is impressive in the way a rubber band is impressive. It stretches, it snaps back, and it is still doing the job of holding something together that probably deserved a better solution. As for the shooting itself, the theory carousel is spinning at full speed. JR is presented as a confident answer. Brad is floated as a possibility, by virtue of being Selena Wu's nephew. And Christina is gaining traction for the most basic reason soap operas have ever needed: motive. The amateur shooter spooked by Scout's ringtone detail is the most credible behavioral clue on the board, but it runs into the inconvenient obstacle of Christina apparently being with Ava at Alexis' house at the time, which is the sort of alibi that only exists to be dismantled later. And for anyone still clinging to nostalgia as evidence, the Luke rerun confusion deserves a firm correction. It was an old clip, not a triumphant return. Then there is Sidwell, who has chosen the bold strategy of threatening children and expecting to remain upright. Threatening Charlotte and Ace is not villainy. It is self-sabotage with extra steps. Sunny and Laura's relationship practically writes the retaliation on its own. Once Sunny learns about Ace, the most believable outcome is Sidwell getting an abrupt field trip to the train station and quietly disappearing. Valentine is also positioned as the cleaner solution, especially now that Sidwell is menacing Charlotte, because Valentine does not negotiate when his daughter is involved. If escalation is the goal, Laura's decision-making deserves its share of blame. Calling law enforcement would have been boring and effective, so naturally, the choice was to call her criminal-adjacent best friend instead, and then act surprised when consequences arrive on schedule. At this point, even the idea of alerting Heather about threats to her grandson reads less like melodrama and more like basic risk management. The show is also begging for one simple act of narrative honesty. Someone needs to tell Marco and Lucas the truth that Sidwell killed his mother, not Sunny. That secret is not suspenseful anymore. It is just withholding. And if the writers insist on keeping Sidwell in play, they should at least acknowledge what they have already established about Charlotte. She is not an easy target. She has a documented talent for terrorizing trained WSB professionals for months, and she carries the Cassadine legacy with enough Helena-adjacent intensity to make threats against her look naive. The warning signs are not subtle. They are practically a neon sign. Alexis, as usual, is being punished for doing the job she is supposed to do. The outrage directed at her for pressing Michael is transparently emotional, less about ethics and more about viewers being dazzled by new Michael and refusing to admit that his lies make him look like a suspect. Cross-examining that reality is not betrayal, it is lawyering. Yet the critique is not baseless. Alexis's apparent willingness to throw Michael under the bus in order to protect her access to Scout is an ugly motivation, especially when it could put a target on the father of Scout's own cousins, Wiley and Amelia. The collateral damage is obvious. The tunnel vision is not. It also sets up the next predictable fracture. Christina and Alexis are poised to clash again, because nothing says stable family dynamics like using Michael as a sacrificial offering while insisting it is all for the greater good. The writers also missed a cleaner, sharper option: making Alexis, or another Davis woman, a serious suspect, because the Davis family had ample reason to want Drew gone, and that is the kind of morally complicated motive web soap operas are built to exploit. And because this is General Hospital, the conspiracy lane is never far away. The WSB is framed not as a flawed institution, but as outright criminal, recruiting under the banner of justice while operating as an underground black market machine, complete with double agents, Brennan as the true puppet, and Colette positioned as a setup. Add Cyrus, Faison, Sidwell, and a research-hungry orbit that drifts toward Windermere, Spencer, Anna, and an Austin Gatlin Holt thread, and the show is effectively proposing a collector's cabinet of Cassadine heirs being curated like gemstones. It is unhinged, yes, but it is at least thematically consistent. In Port Charles, institutional corruption is not a twist. It is a weather pattern. Even with all that chaos, a few details land because they are quietly human. Ace, for example, is described as a child who might sprint into coyotes, an oddly specific fear-mongering image. Yet what is actually shown is a sweet, calm little boy coloring at home, unimpressed by Mr. Sidwell, and not even pitching a fit over a missing cookie at Bobby's. If the show is intent on raising the stakes, protecting that innocence should not be optional. And there is genuine concern where it belongs. The mark on Alexis's cheekbone is noticed, and the hope is simply that she is okay. Finally, the show remembers, briefly, that not everything has to be a procedural slog or a villain monologue. Molly and Cody read as genuinely adorable. Gio playing the violin again works because it is sincere rather than strategic. And Scout and Danny spending time together earns the emotional reaction it gets, precisely because it is not trying so hard to win the episode. Those moments are the reminder of what the larger story often forgets. High drama is only satisfying when the characters still feel like people, not plot devices waiting for the next courtroom scene. Sonny will not take Alexis going after Michael as a casual inconvenience. He will take it as a declaration of war. Sonny is unlikely to applaud Alexis for making a run at Michael, especially given the show's current fixation on turning family loyalty into a competitive sport. And Christina, already reeling from losing Sam, now gets to watch Alexis potentially torch what remains of her stability by driving Michael further out of reach. Meanwhile, the wardrobe department delivered a visual metaphor no one requested. Emma, in a black dress crowned with a giant white flower, looking less like a character in a scene and more like a centerpiece that wandered away from the table. The narrative, obvious course, remains determined to be coy where it counts. Could Drew have sent the anonymous letter, and is Alexis being used as leverage to make sure Michael pays? Possibly, because nothing says tight plotting, like yet another mystery that exists primarily to keep everyone circling the same drain. And while the story insists certain people are under constant surveillance, Charlotte and Ace manage to stand around talking to two strangers with no visible sign of the undercover police or the WSB, as if watching is being performed strictly in the abstract. If there is any annual check-in worth acknowledging, Michael Fairman's best and worst roundup offers the kind of clean summary and sharper perspective the show itself often withholds, helpfully highlighting many of the year's biggest talking points, an editorial sanity check amid the chaos. Speaking of chaos, the endless guessing about who shot Drew has become its own side plot, a self-sustaining frenzy that practically invites the writers to keep dragging the storyline along, whether out of amusement or opportunism, because nothing feeds a runaway arc like proof it still gets attention. Kevin's return appears calibrated less for emotional impact and more for logistics, an efficient way to remove Ace from the board, ostensibly for protection from Sidwell, and conveniently to free Laura's time, energy, and storyline bandwidth. Charlotte, for her part, is not the naive child some characters seem eager to flatter. The attempt to charm her by pretending she has not been thoroughly educated in what it means to be a Cassadine is almost admirable in its delusion. If Ace becomes collateral damage, the hope is that it finally drags Nicholas back into the narrative. More likely, Charlotte herself becomes the target. Useful bait for Valentine, though anyone counting on Valentine to respond D with restraint has clearly not been paying attention. Elsewhere, the romantic prognosis for Chase and Brooklyn looks grim, and the show has practically issued the toe tag in advance. Elizabeth Korda and Chris Van Etten told TV Insider, "They want to expand their family, but they can't make a home for anyone if they can't make a home together." Translation: the relationship is being written toward collapse. Chase's compulsive need to play savior, especially in his crusade to prove Willow's innocence, has once again eclipsed his career and his partner, with the predictable result that Brooklyn is left holding the consequences of his hero complex. She deserves better, and at this point, someone new sounds less like a preference and more like basic self-preservation. Then there is the show's talent-adjacent trivia and nostalgia pipeline. Maurice Benard appears as Desi Arnaz in the 1991 film Lucy and Desi Before the Laughter, currently available on the Roku channel, which is arguably a clearer piece of programming than some of what airs in daytime. And the longing for the classics remains strong, particularly the desire to rewatch Luke and Laura's wedding episode, along with the frustration that Luke's return was limited to a single episode when a full week of standout scenes would have been the bare minimum for a legacy moment. Finally, the interpersonal mess keeps multiplying. Curtis and Jordan are a hard no, both reading as performative and insincere, with the added sting that Portia appears to have been maneuvered and nudged toward Isaiah like a convenient distraction. Through it all, Sonny's suspicion that Michael shot Drew, rather than considering Willow, lands as yet another forced beat in a storyline that has long since exhausted its usefulness. The only truly consistent element is the audience's plea. This plot is old. The writers should retire it. General Hospital spoilers and updates tease the question of who shot Drew Kane will soon be answered, but someone may already know. We know that Michael Corinthos was at Drew's house and left, and Tracy Quartermain saw him. Did Michael see the shooter? And is he protecting someone? The big question is, if Michael did see someone and is protecting him or her, did he see Willow Tate Kane or did he see someone else? If he did see Willow, there actually are two reasons why he wouldn't say it. Even though he's not allowing Willow visits to their children, it doesn't mean he wants her in prison. The main reason why he would not want Willow to visit or have custody is Drew. If he were satisfied she was done with Drew for good, then he may reconsider. Michael knows that Wiley and Amelia Corinthos don't like Drew and don't want to live with him, but they certainly wouldn't want their mother to be in prison and possibly never see her again either. Those are two reasons Michael might protect her. So, if it wasn't Willow who Michael saw shoot Drew or leave right after he heard the shots, who else might he have seen who he'd want to protect? We must bear in mind that the gun was found in Willow's room at Elizabeth Baldwin's house. But why, if it wasn't Willow? Michael was there that day too, as was his mother, Carly Spencer, shortly before the gun was found. Willow claims that she didn't take the gun, and yet she had access to the Quartermain mansion and knew how to get in and out unobserved. One also has to consider the reason the shooter left without making sure Drew was dead, even though they were a darn good shot. Were they interrupted? A recently released preview of What's Ahead from General Hospital's writers said that Kai Taylor and Trina Robinson will solve the case. But they won't tell anyone who the shooter was. So, they as well as Michael will want to protect the shooter. Scout Kane's ringtone was heard on a phone. It's been implied it was Willow's phone, but it could have been Drew's, even though he didn't get a chance to answer. We can't imagine Kai and Trina wanting to protect Willow. Could it be Stella Henry? Would Michael want to protect Stella as well? But that still leaves the question, who put Edward Quartermain's gun in Willow's room? General Hospital spoilers gossip. Anna Devane has been gone for months, and no one seems to be batting an eye at her absence. Dante Falconeri is running the PCPD as acting police commissioner. Valentine Cassadine is back in town and hasn't even mentioned her name. Jason Morgan doesn't seem the slightest bit concerned. Even Emma Scorpio Drake is carrying on with her Christmas like it's normal that Grandma left town without a word and hasn't communicated with her since. With Jason Thompson's recent confession that he would love to return to GH to discover the dynamic between Patrick and Emma, I have to wonder whether that conversation might be in the cards with GH writers. Could we see Anna's family come together in pursuit of tracking her down? Anna's disappearance might seem like a nothing burger to practically everyone who knows her, but something has to give sooner or later. Someone will end up realizing all is not as it seems, and that could be what brings her family home to track down some of those answers. Whether Cesar Faison or someone else entirely is behind Anna's disappearance, the storyline lays the right groundwork to bring everyone home for an all-hands-on-deck search for the family matriarch. We haven't seen Robin Scorpio Drake since May of 2021. Yes, it's been that long. She is more than overdue for a return, and routinely mentions in press interviews and podcast stints that she remains open to appearances for the Sudser, even though full-time soap work just isn't what she's looking for these days. With Emma finally settling down and becoming the Robin-like replacement we've been looking for, her relationship with her parents could have healed enough to welcome them home. Jason Thompson has been a primary character on The Young and the Restless for the last decade, and that means every trip Robin has made back to her roots, she's been flying solo and never able to stay long. Emma's travels to Port Charles to see her grandparents over the years often didn't include either of her parents. Thompson told Swoon, "It makes me a little bit jealous that I can't be there with her a little bit, and it makes me want to know her." Speaking of Patrick's daughter, Emma, General Hospital spoilers suggest Rick Lansing seems to have moved on from that brief 30-day stint he spent in Alexis Davis's basement. Claiming to have found his purpose in life and being newly bent on making amends and reforming himself, Rick might have seen the light, but that doesn't mean the truth won't also make its way into it. Rumor has it that while Rick, Alexis, Ava Jerome, and Christina Corinthos Davis are more than happy to let that little piece of chaos drift into the past, the truth may find its way out anyway. If it does, Molly can probably say goodbye to chick flicks at Mom's house with her sister. Rick was furious when he broke loose from Alexis's chains, and even more so when Cody Bell found him and set him free again. But Rick quickly got a dose of reality when he realized what the ladies were up to, and that they had formed an alliance against him. He wasn't going to be able to beat them at their own game at the time, not without sinking himself. Instead, he may be charting his course for the long game. Does that mean he'll be the one to blow the whistle on what they did, though? It's not likely. Molly is nothing if not a steadfast pursuer of justice. She'll chase it down by any means possible, and when the going gets tough, she'll retreat to write a book about it. Is her next novel about two parents who can't help but disappoint her with betrayals and lies over and over again? This time around, they're both lying to her about the same thing. It's Alexis and Rick versus their daughter. Molly won't have to choose between them, because although Rick was held against his will, he was also in on the grifting and blackmail that landed him there. Molly is bound to struggle with knowing what her sister and mother did to her father, but also what he did to Alexis in return, and that Christina was responsible for Rick's car crash. Still, I don't see Rick being able to sway Molly into forgiving everyone and letting it go, even if they have. Instead, it's probably going to make even less sense to her, and she's not going to appreciate being lied to. Everyone else was in on it while she was left out in the cold, as they all discussed how to hide secrets from her. That doesn't exactly bode well for strong familial relationships. Alexis and Christina won't carry much weight, though Molly may understand her mother was just trying to protect her other daughter. But then again, isn't that always the case? This time, Molly might be done with this family altogether. General Hospital spoilers hint that Drew Kane may make a dirty decision. Will Alexis Davis still lose Scout Quartermain access after Willow Kane's legal victory? Alexis knows she needs to work harder if she hopes to convince the jury that Willow is innocent. After the whole Portia Robinson debacle, Alexis is ready to lock in and truly show off her talent as a lawyer. That's exactly what Alexis will do in the coming GH episodes as Willow's trial heats up. Alexis will definitely hold her own against ADA Justine Turner, so she should feel good about the way things are headed. Based on the latest 2026 preview info, it seems like Alexis is going to be successful in her defense of Willow. Alexis's efforts may pay off when the jury delivers a not guilty verdict, but that doesn't mean Drew will keep his end of the bargain. Although Alexis will expect to keep seeing Scout along with Molly Lansing Davis and Christina Corinthos Davis, that plan may crumble fast. At some point, Drew is surely going to find out that Alexis let Scout spend time with Danny Morgan during her visit to Grandma's house. Danny squeezed in a snow person building session with his sister before Alexis eventually told him that he had to go. Unfortunately, Danny stuck around long enough to create a cover-up now that Scout's been asked to stay tight-lipped. Scout still gave Willow updates on what happened, so she's obviously not the best at keeping secrets. One way or another, Drew's bound to get this Danny news and feel like Alexis has violated the terms of their agreement. Drew has been clear about his disdain for Danny and only let that holiday visit happen on the condition that Danny wouldn't be there. Of course, Drew is also a real piece of work and will no doubt be looking for any reason to abandon his deal with Alexis. Even if Alexis gets Willow exonerated, Drew may use this Danny drama to insist the Scout ban is back on. Alexis, Christina, Molly, and Scout may end up crushed when they're once again kept apart. Since Willow is most likely the one who shot Drew, Alexis may help a guilty woman walk free and have nothing to show for it. General Hospital Spoilers report GH head writers Elizabeth Korda and Chris Van Etten sat down with TV Insider recently and spilled all the tea with regard to what will happen in Port Charles this year. While they didn't share specific timelines, it's unlikely that anything they did share is more than 3 or 4 months down the line, and likely is much sooner. One of the biggest tidbits they dropped was that we will be losing yet another member of the PC community. I know. Enough already. There's no telling whether this person is a long-time vested resident or someone who hasn't been around for very long. If it's a newcomer, my money is on Jack Brennan, because I can't see Valentine Cassadine planning any outcome that isn't permanent elimination of his enemy. Korda and Van Etten mentioned enough to make me question whether Anna Devane's current storyline may be her last. They relayed that Rocco Falconeri is going to be to blame in some regard for a chain of events that transpires, and it makes me wonder if it may be Anna's death. Korda and Van Etten say Rocco faces a stormy 2026, triggering a string of events that will result in the departure of one citizen of Port Charles and dire consequences for others. Okay, it doesn't say it's a death, but that's entirely possible. The dire consequences bit makes me worry about something else they said. Anna is sighted. What happens next will prove traumatic for the Scorpios, after explaining that Emma Scorpio Drake will team up with Mac and Felicia Scorpio to track her down. I could see this being the nail in the coffin for Rocco, so to speak. He's had a rough go of things the last 18 months. His life was more or less okay when Sam McCall was still alive, even though Lulu Spencer was still trapped in a coma. Since Sam's death and Lulu's awakening, everything has changed. He gained a new brother in Giovanni Gio Palmieri, and it's been far from smooth sailing, thanks to Dante Falconeri. Drew Kane has been keeping Rocco away from his sister, Emily Scout Kane. Rocco's nearly fatal bout with alcohol poisoning was bad enough, and his break-in to Professor Henry Dalton's lab was the icing on the cake. But if he feels responsible for Anna's death in some way, I'm not sure he'll bounce back from that darkness. Finola Hughes celebrated her 66th birthday this past fall. She is at prime retirement age, though many soap stars work well into their older years. Just look at how the late Tristan Rogers carried on into his final weeks with a final on-screen goodbye. I hate to think GH would let Anna go out with the kind of bang that just ends her life and writes her off, but there are plenty of years left for her to return. I don't find it hard to believe that she might have other plans for her time at this point in her life. Do you? General Hospital recaps and updates for Friday, January 2nd reveal Cody Bell and Molly Lansing Davis were interrupted, and Christina Corinthos Davis blasted Alexis Davis. Plus, Sonny Corinthos had a warning for Michael Corinthos. Christina explodes over Alexis's strategy. Sidwell sends a chilling message using Ace. Sonny warns Michael. About the witness stand, Laura is pressured to obey Sidwell's orders. Michael is ready to go to war. After a night together, Cody made Molly a big stack of pancakes for breakfast. He asked if she thought he was a bad influence, and she said she was following her sister's advice to live her life. Cody invited her to spend the day with him, but as he picked her up to go to his bedroom, Felicia Scorpio and James West arrived. They came for a riding lesson that Cody had forgotten. Realizing the interruption, Felicia offered to bring James back later, but Molly insisted he try the new saddle he got for Christmas. They said goodbye, but it got awkward when James asked if Molly was Cody's girlfriend. He said yes, but she said no. Laura Collins reached out to Charlotte Cassadine to look after Ace Cassadine because the little boy's nanny was unwell. Charlotte's taking care of Ace would allow Laura to concentrate on a crucial meeting. Charlotte suggested taking her cousin to the park, assuring that they would be completely safe with her security team, as she doubted her father would confront her in broad daylight. After discussing Valentine Cassadine and how his reputation made everyone overly cautious about Charlotte's safety, Laura finally consented to let her grandkids go to the park. Charlotte exited the condo with Ace holding her hand. Later, Ezra Boyle showed up and told Laura that Jen Sidwell wanted her to back the installation of helipads on Spoon Island and the piers. Laura countered that it was unjust to the residents of Port Charles for Sidwell to land his private helicopter on public property, simply because he preferred not to take the launch to the mainland. Unfazed, Ezra snacked on nuts as he responded that it was her responsibility to convince the citizens. He suggested that Laura should just give their boss what he desired. He continued, saying as she wouldn't want to witness Sidwell's behavior when he didn't get his way, Barco's. And Jen's chatted about Willow's trial, Drew's potential downfall, and Laura's compliance. At Bobby's, Marco Rios and Sidwell talked about Willow Kane's trial. Sidwell mentioned that if Willow were found guilty of shooting Drew Kane, the congressman would be ineffective on Capitol Hill since they wouldn't be able to get him reelected. It would be even more detrimental if Drew faced impeachment and was convicted of blackmail, so they needed a new connection in Washington to keep their import businesses secure. While he currently had the local politicians under control, Sidwell noted that Laura didn't appreciate being bossed around. So they had to ensure the mayor stayed compliant by reminding her of what she could potentially lose. Meanwhile, Jordan Ashford and Curtis Ashford woke up together in bed and promised not to repeat the mistakes that had previously separated them. He was set on prioritizing not just their relationship, but also the one he had with Trina Robinson. They went to Bobby's, where she exchanged quick pleasantries with her boss and his son before they found a table across the restaurant. When Curtis inquired about working for Sidwell, Jordan said it was the best job she'd ever had. But she hinted that she had her own motives due to her suspicions about his illegal activities. Curtis told her she didn't need to share anything with him, but he was willing to support her if she needed it. She replied that she planned to enjoy her work, until the moment she took Sidwell down. Later, their discussion shifted back to their renewed relationship and the secrets they had kept from each other during their first marriage. Jordan questioned whether their situation was any different now since they both had things they couldn't share. The couple promised to always engage in tough conversations, even if they preferred to avoid them. Outside, Sidwell was wrapping up a phone call when Charlotte and Ace came over. She was taken aback that he recognized her and her cousin, and Sidwell mentioned that he knew her grandmother. When Marco stepped outside, Sidwell introduced him and noted that Charlotte had once lived at Windermere with her father. Ace started to get fidgety, so Charlotte opted to take him home for his nap, instead of giving him a cookie as she had intended. However, before they departed, Sidwell cautioned her to keep a close watch on her cousin, since kids that age tend to wander off. Concerned, Charlotte forced a smile and thanked Sidwell for the advice, then took Ace's hand and led him away. After Charlotte and Ace left, Sidwell told Marco that Charlotte was Valentine's daughter, and they could use a man like Valentine for their project. Marco pointed out that Valentine was a fugitive, but Sidwell believed they could convince Charlotte to get her father on board. Marco understood why his dad was so nice to Charlotte, until he made an implied threat against a child. He explained he just wanted to send a message to Mayor Collins. Back at Laura's, Charlotte shared with her grandmother that she met Mr. Sidwell while out with Ace, and he sent his regards. When Laura wanted details, Charlotte felt scared when she heard that Sidwell suggested she watch Ace closely, because kids could be unpredictable and might vanish if you looked away for even a second. Deciding to change her legal strategy, Alexis shared her updated witness list with Suzanne and explained her new plan to target Michael Corinthos as the main suspect. Suzanne questioned if Alexis was influenced by the anonymous letter she received, but Alexis quickly dismissed it, stating the letter lacked proof. Still, she intended to prove the letter's claims true. Later, Christina entered the empty living room and started reading a file on the coffee table. When Alexis came back, Christina confronted her for accusing her brother of a crime he didn't commit. Alexis replied that after reviewing the evidence, she believed if the police had done their job, Michael would be on trial. As they argued, Alexis mentioned she had reason to think Michael was at Drew's house the night of the shooting. Christina, having seen the note in the folder, countered that Drew might have sent the letter and was using Alexis to ensure Michael faced consequences for Willow's actions. Alexis argued it was her responsibility to build a strong case to create reasonable doubt for Willow, not just for her client, but also for Scout Kane and Sam McCall. With Scout's well-being at risk, Alexis warned Christina not to inform Michael about the case's new direction, adding that Michael was an adult and could handle himself. At Acting District Attorney Justine Turner's office, she and Dante Falconeri discussed the tampered traffic camera footage. When she asked if anyone in the department could have altered it, he frowned, saying a few days ago he would have said no, but now he wasn't sure. Justine recognized that losing the footage was a setback, and Alexis would exploit that to cast doubt on Willow and blame someone else. Justine pointed out that even though Michael was cleared, he remained a suspect, and she wanted to know what Curtis discussed with Selena Wu that night. Suzanne then came in with Alexis's updated witness list, which included Dante, Ezra Boyle, Jacinda Bracken, Tracy Quartermain, Michael, and Elizabeth Baldwin. After Alexis's assistant left, Justine complained that, with the new list, Alexis would argue that the PCPD was wrong to focus on Willow as the shooter. Dante agreed, suspecting Alexis would claim he wasn't pursuing Michael as a suspect because they were brothers. Justine reminded Dante to be honest during his testimony, and she'd object if needed. She added that Alexis had made a mistake by trying to blame Portia to save Willow, which ended up benefiting them. Dante inquired whether she was pursuing the case due to it being Anna Devane's investigation, or if she thought Willow was guilty. Justine responded that the beauty of the law lay in the fact that their beliefs were irrelevant. They adhered to the letter of the law to present the facts as effectively as possible, while Alexis was tasked with defending her client to the best of her capabilities. Ultimately, after both sides had presented their arguments, it would be the jury's responsibility to determine the verdict. Of course, assuming that the jurors were all impartial. Sonny invited Michael over and told him about running into Justine at Café Cherie, saying she was interested in him and asked if Michael had received a subpoena for the trial. Michael answered that he was already on Alexis's witness list, which led Sonny to conclude that both lawyers were planning to make Michael say something he would regret. Michael believed that Alexis would argue he might be the shooter, and Sonny anticipated that during cross-examination, Justine would use Michael to highlight Willow's poor judgment. Sonny warned that she would trap him into saying negative things about his ex-wife. He continued, "If Michael lashed out against Willow on the stand, it would have lasting effects on Wiley and Amelia Corinthos." Frustrated, Michael responded that he wanted his kids to know the truth about their mother, how she always prioritized her needs over theirs, and that he would do anything to protect them. "Anything?" Sonny asked pointedly. Angrily, Michael shouted that he understood what his father was implying. In this situation where he had framed Willow, the final blow would be taking the witness stand and ensuring everyone knew what his ex was capable of. That meant that she would be locked away for good, as that was the only way his children would be safe. "So, what are you telling me?" Sonny pressed. In reply, Michael calmly said, "That when I finally get on that stand, everything I say will be for the sake of my children."
Blind.
General Hospital spoilers reveal that Charlotte Cassadine will vanish, so Nathan West and Lulu Spencer will tackle an emergency mission to find her before it's too late. Although Charlotte loves Lulu, Rocco Falconeri, and the life she's rebuilt in Port Charles, a huge part of her still feels like home is with her dad. Charlotte got a sweet holiday reunion with Valentine Cassadine, thanks to Carly Spencer, but that won't be enough. The longer Charlotte goes without seeing Valentine, the more she'll want to talk to him again. Charlotte presumably still has plenty of questions about why Valentine's hiding out in Carly's attic and what his next move will be. Valentine and Charlotte didn't have long to chat, so she'll no doubt be eager to have a lengthier, more enlightening conversation. Of course, Charlotte is also feeling stressed out by the constant police presence at her house. It feels like the cops are crawling all over Lulu's place, so that may play a role in why Charlotte decides to make a quick getaway. Charlotte will indeed get mischievous and run off without the police realizing it until she's already gone. From there, Lulu will get the news no mother wants to hear. After Lulu gets updates on Charlotte's vanishing act, her mind may go to the worst-case scenario. Lulu might fear that Valentine has scooped Charlotte up and whisked her out of the country like he did before. Nathan may downplay that idea and have a hunch that Charlotte is still somewhere in Port Charles. Sooner or later, Rocco may confess that Charlotte told him that she saw Valentine, so that could add to all the drama. Whatever the case, Nathan will make some promises to Lulu regarding Charlotte's safe return and get busy with the search. Lulu obviously won't want to sit around while Nathan's on the hunt, so she'll join forces with him and hope to find Charlotte while they still can. Although Lulu will fret over the possibility of Valentine and Charlotte escaping together, she'll try to trust Nathan and have some faith that he won't let that happen. Naturally, this whole ordeal will give Nathan and Lulu another reason to grow closer. GH fans won't want to miss the intensifying romantic feelings on both sides, so stay tuned for Lulu and Nathan's next bonding session. General Hospital spoilers say Charlotte's disappearance will cause some chaos, but Lulu and Nathan will work hard to solve the mystery of where she is now. Charlotte could draw attention to Carly and Valentine's alliance if she gets too sloppy. General Hospital spoilers tease that a lot happened in Port Charles this year. And as normal for any soap opera, there are times when actors need to be replaced in their role. General Hospital scored a home run when they replaced Chad Duell with Rory Gibson as Michael Corinthos. Most fans accepted the new Michael instantly. That is certainly not always the case. So let's talk about Jack Brennan. When Jack Brennan first showed up in Port Charles, he had just taken over as head of the WSB from Frisco Jones. Viewers soon learned that Jack was also working with Valentine Cassadine as head of the Pikeman organization. Pikeman had been targeting Sonny Corinthos for months. Jack also formed an immediate flirtatious relationship with Carly Spencer. Jack was soon arrested for his crimes, and normally that would have been the end of it. Fans quickly noted the chemistry between Carly and Jack, so eventually he was released from prison under mysterious circumstances. He also took over as section chief of the new Port Charles division of the WSB. Circumstances continued to bring Carly and Jack together, and they were on the verge of a long-term romance when something strange happened. Major was replaced by veteran soap actor Chris McKenna. It was a jarring change that many fans still haven't accepted to this day. Let's start by saying that McKenna is a terrific actor, but his take on Brennan is very different than the suave mystery man with the Australian accent. His relationship with Carly was quite different as well. Perhaps if McKenna had played a brand new character, it would be easier to accept him. As it is, it seems as though Jack may be taking a villainous turn once again, especially since he brought Jocelyn Jacks into the WSB. Carly will never forgive Jack for that, so his storyline potential may have an expiration date. Do you miss Charles Massur's version of Jack Brennan? Or do you prefer Chris McKenna? Do you think Jack Brennan will be around much longer? Anything can happen in Port Charles, so stay tuned to General Hospital airing weekdays on ABC. General Hospital spoilers reveal Harrison Chase has been suspended from the PCPD police force, courtesy of Acting Police Commissioner Dante Falconeri, his one-time best friend and partner. From where I'm sitting, it seemed like a fair decision to me. I don't think Dante was acting in malice, and I do think he has been impartial during the investigation into Drew Kane's shooting. In contrast, Chase isn't even acting like a cop anymore. He's gone rogue. And while there was nothing overtly wrong about his part-time self-led infestation to help Willow Tate Kane, there is something very wrong with the accusations he made against Dante, given that the request he made wouldn't even have been legal. Regardless, now Chase gets to tell Brooklyn Quartermain the truth about what happened at work. Buckle up! All right, maybe it would be best if Chase told his wifey the truth, but that doesn't mean he's going to. Of course, that also doesn't mean she isn't going to find out. I'd put my money on Dante being the one who ends up telling her, and likely not in any way where he will be trying to stick it to Chase. He'll probably assume she knows, apologize for how things went, and assert his need to do his job in defense of his decision. To a very confused woman who has no idea her husband isn't going to work every day. Can you see it? Chase is starting to look a little bit unrecognizable. I'm just waiting for Brooke Lynn to catch up to that part. The carefree guy she married shifted at some point along the way. They went from sort of raising Violet Finn after losing Gregory Chase the day after their wedding, to finding out Chase was sterile, planning for an adoption, and then learning Brooke Lynn had already been through such giving up her own child, who just happened to be living at the mansion, who just happened to right under their noses. That's a lot for any couple to weather. And now, Ned Quartermain's recent heart attack has added a layer of grief. Brooke Lynn just may not be able to withstand any more of Chase's antics in the pursuit of justice for his ex-wife. Just moments before learning her father had a heart attack, Brooke Lynn was having it out with her hubby about his investigations serving to help Willow. In the end, she simmered down and reflected on how it only made her love him more that he would go to such lengths for a friend. But now he is risking his career, and instability isn't what Brooke Lynn signed up for. This working woman expects the same from her partner, but GH writers Elizabeth Korda and Chris Van Etten told TV Insider they want to expand their family, but they can't make a home for anyone if they can't make a home together.